Hey, we're glad you're here tonight. It's a really beautiful day here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think we hit 70 degrees and the sun's out. And I hope wherever you are today that you've had a beautiful day. My name is David Emery, lead pastor at Harvard Avenue Christian Church, joined here by Ron Nofziger, who I'll introduce here in a minute. And we're calling this series of discussions on Wednesday night, Overheard. It's a series of conversations where we are digging into a Lenten theme, talking about the things that stand between us and our life with God. And one of the things about Lent is that Lent is a season where we can focus on our life with God, and a season where we can focus on things that we need to change, and believing that that focus, that intensified focus, will help us become a better version of ourselves, help us feel more connected to the God that we love and serve, and make life better for our friends and our family. So we're glad you joined us tonight. We're doing this each week on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. And we're doing this live on YouTube. It'll be recorded. You can watch it again later. But also during this conversation, you can ask questions. And please send those questions to us, and we'll do our best to answer them. Well, this evening, we're going to be talking about a subject that I think everyone can connect to and everyone can relate to, one that will be beneficial to all of us. We're talking about the subject of bitterness, the impact of holding on to our anger and our resentment and what it does to us. I would define bitterness as unforgiveness fermented. Bitterness is what happens when we hold on to a hurt and we nurse it. And when it metastasizes on the inside of us, it will transfer and sour and touch every part of our life. We're also going to be talking about the importance of releasing those hurts and the importance of forgiveness. So I want to thank Ron Nofziger for being our guest tonight. Ron, thank you for being here. Ron is a chaplain, retired chaplain from Hillcrest Hospital. Ron, how long were you on staff at Hillcrest?
46 years, David.
46 years. Now, how long have you been retired?
A year and a half. And I want to thank you for including me in this conversation tonight. This is a very important subject, and it's a life-changing focus.
Yeah. Ron is also a member, active long-term member of Harvard Avenue Christian Church, and do you also do therapy? You work with married couples and that sort of thing as a part of your work?
Yeah, in my ministry, I've kind of have a kind of a dual focus, theological and therapeutic windows into helping people, looking at people, ministering to people, helping people, both in the hospital professional chaplaincy as well as pastoral psychotherapy and counseling.
You know, it's pretty unusual for somebody in today's world to stay in the same place for 46 years. What kept you hanging in the same place for so long? What was it that kept you there all those years?
It was such a blessing to be involved with so many wonderful, brilliant, creative, caring, compassionate people. It was a sacred privilege I discovered in my CPE, clinical pastoral education training at Hillcrest in 1969 and 1970. I returned as a staff chaplain in 73 and then retired in 2019 as the director of the pastoral care program. But I learned in my CPE training that it was a sacred privilege and a special ministry to be at the bedside with folks. And it was just a fit for me. I have high regard and appreciation for pulpit pastors, congregational clergy, the emotional, mental, spiritual, theological maturity it takes to be an effective pastor. I have high regard for pulpit pastors.
Well, we certainly appreciate the work you do, and we know that right now in the world we're living in, the role that healthcare workers and chaplains are playing, or hospitals are playing a pretty significant role. And so thank you for what you do and for all the work you've done and for your commitment to our church. You mentioned a minute ago, back to the subject now, on our subject for tonight, on the subject of bitterness. You said it was an important topic for us to discuss during Lent. Why would you say that? What's the importance of discussing this topic of bitterness? What do you see as its importance to us?
It was back in 2002 that I had an opportunity to go to Boston, Harvard School of Medicine conference on the importance of forgiveness. And as a pastor and counselor, pastoral counselor and clergy person, minister, I thought I knew quite a bit about the importance of forgiveness. I knew that forgiveness was considered to be an act of virtue by most faith groups, that is seminal to healthy spirituality, that could be repairing in relationships. But when I got to Harvard and to the conference on the importance of forgiveness, I learned that forgiveness was considered to be one of, if not the most important cognitive, spiritual interventions for personal health and wellness. And not only was it important to our emotional, spiritual, relational well-being, but also to our physical well-being. It can have tremendous impact on us. This was discovered in the early 90s. It was researched a lot by medical and behavioral scientists, and they came up with these awarenesses about the importance of forgiveness.
Ron, have you ever met a 90-year-old who was bitter and angry? I mean, I guess what I'm asking, if that's a loaded question, but most of the people I meet who live into their 90s tend to be grateful and don't seem to be bitter people, because I don't see how you can live that long carrying bitterness.
Well, not wanting to get into politics too much, but I think we see them. Have seen them regularly in the last several years.
Interesting.
In a political light, there seems to be a lot of acrimony and bitterness and anger. It's a universal human struggle. No one is exempt from it. It's a challenge for all of us. It's not something that cannot be modulated, can managed and navigated in healthy, appropriate ways. But it's so easy to get stuck in bitterness from the wounds and the disappointments of life. I know my family of origin, there was a lot of conflict and struggle. A couple who my mother, by the time she was in her early 30s, not 30s, but 20s, early to mid 20s, she had been married many years already and had 5 kids.
Wow.
And yeah, there was a lot going on. And my dad was a great guy in a lot of ways, but he also had his issues. My mom also. And in her mid 30s, they divorced. And the conflict that was related to that didn't end with a divorce. It seemed like it increased. And for the next 30 years, until my father died at an early age of 63, they still were having significant conflict. Then when my father died, my oldest brother, 5 years older than me, there were 5 kids, I was the middle one, he picked up the baton and he kept the conflict going until he died, before my mother died. And so there are a lot, there's bitterness is something that can get embedded in a family system or a person's personality, and you just can have tremendous negative impact. And it wasn't like it totally dominated our life or anything like that, but it was a very relevant variable and very present variable in our family. So I understand bitterness. And I was 10 when my parents divorced, and there were circumstances around that I really felt wounded from, and it took me a while to transcend that sense of loss and difficulty for myself. But it's just a universal human struggle. And bitterness, it's not a lifestyle, it's a death style. When you get stuck in it, it's not a lot, like many addictions, really, it's not a lifestyle, it's a death style. And it's kind of interesting. Let me just share this real quick.
Please do.
Sue Monk Kidd's book, The Secret Life of Bees. Lily is a lonely 14-year-old runaway. And in the book, she says, people in general would rather die than forgive.
Hmm.
It's that hard. If God said in plain language, I'm giving you a choice, forgive or die, a lot of people would go ahead and order their coffin. And it is a choice between living a full, abundant life or living a life that's constricted and full of negative energy and potential and potential physical, emotional, spiritual, relational difficulties.
Ron, so I imagine that there's someone right now who's listening to this and said, man, you're describing my family. You're describing my heart. And I believe everything that you're saying is true. I can see what it's doing to me. I can see what it's doing to my family. I'm angry and I'm bitter, but I just can't seem to let it go. I don't know how to let it go. And I believe in forgiveness, but how would I do that? How can I do that when it seems, you said it was an addiction? How can I let it go? How can I forgive?
Forgiveness, like you said in the Sunday sermon, forgiveness is about healing, and it's about taking back our power in our life with conscious awareness. Without a conscious awareness about the negative impact and fallout from it, that makes it hard. With that conscious awareness, then a person can decide, do I want to continue this, or do I want to try to do something different? What can I do different? How can I get beyond this? How can I get past this? How can I let this go? And it's about reaching out to others. It's about being aware. It's about being committed. It's about having a true desire to release the bitterness and move into the forgiveness. It's appreciating that forgiveness has nothing to do with excusing or condoning or ignoring or denying or minimizing or discounting. I loved your phrase in the sermon. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was not meaningful. It remains meaningful, but you just don't want it to continue to constrict and swallow up your life. At the Harvard conference, Dr. Herbert Benson was the first speaker, and he was welcoming everybody, and there was like 500 people there. And he made a comment. He said, a grudge is a feast until you realize you're the main course.
Wow. Yeah.
The grudge is a feast until you realize you're the main course. And I thought, all right, I already got my money's worth. Just having that comprehension, that understanding, the impact of it.
One of the things that becomes really clear to me is as I talk to people about this and listen to you, I think one of the first steps, obviously, to overcoming bitterness is realizing the impact it has on us.
Absolutely.
Is realizing before we can make a decision to rid ourselves of it, we have to understand what it's costing us. And so today, I was sharing with Ron earlier before we started the call that I had a meeting today, a small group meeting with about 9 of our young dads in the church today. And it was a pretty profound meeting because in the meeting, they were acknowledging the desire to let go of bitterness because they were seeing and acknowledging the impact it was having on them, and it was being transferred onto their children. And so they were talking among themselves how they could release it, how they could not carry home the bitterness they were having at work into their family and transferring it with others. And I think you're right on there, because I do think that bitterness is one of these things that grows slowly over time. And we may not realize ourselves until somebody points it out, or until we have an awareness or an awakening that it has taken over our life. I said Sunday that bitterness doesn't want to just move into your heart, it wants to take over your heart. And when it metastasizes, it sours everything. So I think that's a great point for anyone that you just made, that anyone who's on this call today, it does begin with acknowledging the impact on us. What do you think about this statement that forgiveness is a decision that we make, and a process.
Oh, absolutely. It's a choice. And that's an important point as far as how can I shift out of this? Number one, it's to realize it's a choice. It's a choice between living bitter or living better. And you've maybe heard that before. That's been around for some time, but it just boils down to, do I want to live bitter or do I want to live better? And the process of steps of forgiveness is grieving. 2 steps. Very simple. Grieving and let go. It's very simple, right? But not really. Like Lily said, it is so hard to do. Forgiveness is so hard. Most people would just rather go and order their coffin. But the part of grieving and letting go, just learn to let yourself feel, honor it, externalize it, articulate it, process it. Don't get stuck in it. You do this not to just recall it and suffer again for what's happened. You do it so you can move on. Express yourself, your feelings. Macbeth, Shakespeare in Macbeth said, give sorrow words. The grief that does not speak whispers the o'er-fraught heart and bids it break. Give sorrow words. The grief that does not speak whispers the o'er-fraught heart and bids it break. And not just talk about it within your own spirit and your own heart, but talk about it with somebody else with the intent to move on and to move forward. And begin to realize that what happened isn't necessarily just about you. Yes, it is about you, but what is about that is me, and what is not about me. And whatever the offender did, don't take that on as yours. And stop blaming the offender for what they did. Stop blaming them for not only what they did, but also how you feel about it. Understand that your feelings is that's your what you have control over, what you can do something about. And you can change. You can shift from feeling all that hurt and bitterness into a better, more meaningful life.
Ryan, let me ask you a question.
And seek help. Reach out and get some help.
Why do you think in your family, you talked about your family, and you said you had a brother that carried it on. Why do you think that you were able to walk out of that situation and respond and have this sort of maybe healthier life approach? You didn't carry that bitterness forward, whereas a sibling carried it forward. How did you walk out of that different? What was it about? Were you lucky, or did you just do something different?
I was lucky. It was a long journey. I got into clinical pastoral education, and clinical pastoral education understands, as a pastor, you need your seminary training, you need your theology, you need your biblical knowledge, but the CPE also focuses on being a student of yourself. And that's not always easy, and it's not always fun, and it's not always pretty, but it's healing. And it was there where I started a journey of starting to understand and appreciate how my history didn't have to be my destiny, how it was impacting my life, my marriage, my family, and in ways that were not what I really wanted for me or for them. And I talked to a lot of people over a long period of time, and was just blessed to have some good mentors and some good consultants who helped me grow and heal and expand myself as a person and my capacity to engage in work and be in love with people. It's a process. It may not happen overnight for folks, but if you want to do something healthy for yourself, that doesn't mean giving up chocolate or getting on a treadmill. Forgive somebody. Let go of bitterness. I like the idea of a bitterness fast. That's great. If during Lent, if only for Lent, for 40 days and 40 nights, forgive somebody and see what it's like and see where it takes you and see what that's like for you.
Yeah, for those of you who may not be may not have been a part of the series, what we've been talking about is a different kind of fast. That instead of giving up things like chocolate or giving up food or alcohol or caffeine, let's give up some hard things like bitterness. And sometimes when you give up stuff for Lent, you take it back, but we're giving up stuff that we don't want to take back anymore. And so if you are not aware of the bitterness, then that's an opportunity in this season to really get quiet and to pay attention to what's in your heart, because those things will start to reveal themselves to you. I have a question for you. How do we identify bitterness? Somebody writes, I know that sounds silly, but I suspect we try to ignore or not acknowledge what may be hurting us and what is bitter. It says, let me say it again. I know that sounds silly, but I suspect we try to ignore or not acknowledge what might be hurting us and what is bitter. How do we identify bitterness?
How often do I find myself being short with people? How often do I find myself being short with myself? I really appreciated the scripture from Hebrews 12:14. How did that go? I
got it memorized.
I got it. Live in peace with everyone. Live in peace with, including yourself. And if you're struggling with living in peace with yourself, that might be an indication that there's something that's holding you back, that you may not be fully aware of, that that is impeding your journey and your peace in life. And living in peace with everyone. And that doesn't mean you condone everything people do. Acceptance isn't necessarily endorsement. Doesn't mean I condone or accept what something's doing, but it just means I understand that's their journey. That's about them. That's not about me. My reaction is about me. And if I get if I get in angry or upset or yeah, it's normal to understand. But if I hold on to that, that's not about that person. That's why am I doing that? That what they're doing is not about me, it's about them. How I react to it is about me. Why am I reacting? What's going on? What's underneath this that may be at the root of this that I'm not aware of? That's been very helpful for me to work with in my life. That boundary of, okay, how they're coming at me, maybe something I said, but that's really not about me. That's about them, my reaction. That's all about me and not about them. And for me to learn to take responsibility for that and let go of the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's helpful.
I think it's really helpful to me. You've got some great lines here. I'm going to come back to them in a minute. I want to quote you back two things you said that I don't want to forget. But I think too that how do we recognize if we got bitterness in us? If you feel this inside, this bent toward negativity.
Yes.
This bent toward negativity, excuse our perceptions of others. If we find it difficult to trust others because we've been hurt by someone else, it may be that it's because we're holding on to some bitterness. Also, bitterness intensifies our reactions. And you hit it on this, that if I blow up out of proportion about something that's happened and the scale of the response does not fit the event, it may very well be that I'm carrying some hurt from someone else. So for instance, you come home from work, you had a bad day at work, you're angry at someone at work, you're carrying some bitterness from your work, and you come home and then you walk through your house and you step on a toy and on your bare feet and hurt your foot, and you just unleash on your kid. I told you. That's an indication you're carrying something that you've carried over. I think that's a part of it.
Yeah, you remind me of the mid 80s when Hillcrest was going through some layoffs, and I was being asked to help employees deal with stress about being laid off or being afraid of being laid off. So I was helping people doing their stress management this time. And I came home one day from work, came in the front door, and Spencer, he was probably 10 or 12 at the time, our oldest son. I got in, I laid into him about something. And about halfway through, he looks at me in the eye to eye and he goes, "Dad, I don't deserve this." He said, "I don't know what's going on, but I don't deserve this. Something else is going on." I mean, it was like a bucket of cold water on top of me. It just caused me to stop in my tracks and reflect a little bit. And I realized as I was helping other people deal with their stress about being laid off, I was worried about being laid off, and I wasn't handling that very well and was dumping it on him. So I had to go back to him and say, "You're right. That wasn't fair. You didn't deserve that." And apologize for that and take responsibility for my reaction. So yeah, that can be an indication. What's the excess baggage on a scale of 1 to 10? If what's going on would deserve maybe a 4 response, and I'm at 7 or 8 or 9, then what's the other baggage in there that I'm up that high? Yeah.
I think too, you brought it up, is that when we're carrying bitterness, we're not able to be present to the people in the room. We're still where we were before.
Yeah.
And so if you find yourself having difficulty being present because you're running through something in your mind, some hurt or something that you're carrying, and you're not able to be fully present to an experience with another person, it may be that you're carrying bitterness. You said 2 things. Go ahead.
Well, what's my sense of peace? Do I have a really a sufficient sense of peace? Not 100% of the time, but am I have a sense of peace? Am I have a sense of joy? Do I have a sense of joy in life? If those things are lacking, then maybe there's some bitterness. Maybe there's something else, bitterness or whatever, that it would be good for me to unpack and to honor and to integrate and to then open that energy up for my life now, rather than it being kind of hitched to some bitterness or hitched to the past. This is all about gaining your life back and gaining your energy back and your joy. The Greek word enthusiasmos, we get the word enthusiasm. It's a wonderful word. Enthusiasmos means to be filled with God. So when we're enthusiastic, we're filled with God.
Yeah. Hey, so you said, that's great. You said 2 things I want to highlight. I don't want people to forget. You said acceptance is not endorsement. We can accept someone, but we don't have, that doesn't mean we're endorsing behavior or hurt. That's a great line. The other thing you said that I hope everybody wrote down was your history does not have to be your destiny. And I think there are a lot of people, myself included, and all of us, who feel like we get stuck in bitterness and we think, this is what my life is going to be. I'm stuck here. I can't see anything different than what's going on in my life right now. And this is my destiny. But as you pointed out, your history has to be, and that's the gospel. That through the good news of Jesus Christ, we are born again. We are made anew. We are resurrection people. That our history does not have to be our destiny. That there's always new life and always. I just think that's just a great point you made. Let me ask you another question. At what
it's
point,
almost as good as yours, David, in your sermon about forgiveness is a resurrection.
Right.
It truly is. It brings what's dead in our lives back to life. Forgiveness will bring what's dead in our lives back to life. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. So let me ask you this question. So you were able to walk out of that because you had a lot of training and went to CPE. And by the way, I went to CPE. It was an eye-opening. It wasn't always the most pleasant experience to do that work. It was difficult. I did it in Dallas at Parkland Hospital. It was a great experience, life-changing experience for me. But not everybody has been afforded the opportunities we have to do that inner work. At what point do you think someone should seek out a therapist to work through some of these things? Because people are probably carrying some things that they need to talk through and to unwind those knots. At what point would you recommend that someone perhaps seek out a counselor or a therapist to work through bitterness and forgiveness?
Well, it could even be a neighbor. It could be a good friend. It could be maybe a aunt or uncle, somebody that you feel safe with and you feel comfortable with and you respect. I'm not gonna be that kind of transparent with somebody that's going to be condemning, rejecting, judging, minimizing, criticizing. You need to find something. You need a safe space, and sometimes that can be with a friend. Sometimes that can be even with a stranger. Who knows? I was going through a crisis years ago, and I'd been through enough pastoral care and chaplaincy training. I was going through grief big time. I was at Allied Plumbing, getting the plumbing part. And it just, a wave of grief hit me. Instead of just swallowing it and just stuffing it like I had all my life, I didn't go into a primal grief, but I got teary-eyed. I don't know, but the gal who was helping me at the counter, I don't know what she thought, but my plumbing was going. My spiritual plumbing was working while I was picking on the plumbing part. And so just giving yourself permission, find somebody. It could be a therapist, and somebody who's got some professional training in this area could be helpful as well. Yeah.
Let me say this to those of you who are watching this who may not be a part of Harvard Avenue Christian Church. And for those of you who are, we hope that you will share this overheard conversation with there's somebody that needs to hear this conversation, somebody that will benefit. We hope you'll share it. But let me say this to everyone. We hope that Harvard Avenue Christian Church is a positive, it is a positive and life-affirming and welcoming place. This is a place where we hope that you can come and be your real self and get the help that you need to live a good resurrection, beautiful, abundant life. This should be this is a no shame place. No shame. If you're carrying bitterness in your heart, no shame, just understanding. We want to be here for you, to be that kind of church for you, where it can be a safe place for you to open your life up to the love and the power and the presence of the grace of God, in your life. What do you say to someone, Ron, who is living with, married to, friends with, works with a bitter person, and you love and care for that person? How can we best show empathy and care for someone who is in our life that is carrying around this bitterness, and we want more for them?
Certainly not take anything from them don't personalize stuff from them unless you deserve it. If it fits, wear it. That was one thing I learned from Virginia Satir about other people's complaints or negative emotions. If it fits, wear it. If it doesn't, don't wear it. Don't wear other people's emotions. A recent phrase I heard was, and it was Katie, the Republican congressman, I think Republican from California. She's being interviewed about her mother dying from COVID. Yeah, I forget how they got it, but her comment was not carrying somebody else's dream. Don't carry somebody else's dream. You try to carry something, you're going to have a nightmare. Live your dream, carry your dream. Don't carry somebody else's emotions. Just carry your own. But anyway, what was your question? I'm sorry.
Well, I was asking, how do we care for, we're in a relationship with someone, maybe we're married to someone who's bitter. How do we work through that with them?
Yeah, don't personalize it. Maintain your boundaries. Boundaries are very important in life. Having healthy boundaries, good solid boundaries, maintain those. Do the acceptance. Don't necessarily, doesn't mean you agree or disagree, If there's ever an opportunity to very gently try to engage them around what's going on, do it very, very gently. And if it opens a door, fine. If it doesn't, leave it alone. Wait for them. If you have opportunity to let them know you care about them, be loving and accepting of them, not necessarily agreeing or endorsing with what's going on with them. And you can't drive somebody else's car. You can only drive your car. And we try to drive each other's car. My gosh, that's a train wreck waiting to happen.
The 12-step program, someone who struggles with alcohol, until they want to live a sober life, we can want it for them, but until they want it, it's not going to happen. They've got to want it, and we can't do the work for them.
Yeah, they say you can't lead a horse. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But you can make them thirsty.
Right.
But you got to be careful about how you do that.
That's a great line. I think one of the things that's been helpful to me is to realize that people who hurt people are people who've been hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think
I've done that.
How's that?
I've been hurt and I've hurt people.
And what I was getting at there was, and I have too, is when someone's hurting you and when someone's being harsh toward you, I think it allows us to have a little bit of compassion to know that there's a bigger story going on that maybe we don't know.
And at the same time, you don't allow yourself to be abused.
Absolutely. Yeah. So at what point do you say, okay, boundaries, I'm going to remove myself from this relationship, I'm going to love someone at a distance, and I'm just not going to put myself in that environment anymore? At what point do you make a decision?
If you've endeavored to engage them in a healthy, functional, appropriate way, to try to look at what's going on and shift gears for them, and it's not going anywhere, and you're being abused, and it's time to say, hey, I need space. I'm out of here. I'm gone. If it's somebody you care about, it's harder. If it's somebody you don't care about, hit the door quick. There's no sense in being abused by somebody. That's not love, and that's not how God wants us to be treated or treat other people. It's hard to understand forgiveness is not reconciliation. Reconciliation takes how many people, David? Forgiveness takes how many people? One. Forgiveness can happen whether the other person participates or not. It's certainly powerful and meaningful if the other person is willing to do that. But if they're not able to, if they're not at that point, or just not flat ever going to be able to do that, you can still do it. It doesn't mean you reconcile with that person. Doesn't mean you allow yourself to be abused by them. You actually may set that kind of geographical boundary with them and do it in big time major.
You know what? This whole conversation has been terrific, but it was worth waiting to the end to get to that part. That was really helpful to me. I know it was helpful to others. I've got a question from the audience. Someone is wondering what techniques would be recommended to resist identifying with someone else's emotions. It's all too easy to do.
Oh, one really helpful thing. I don't know how to play guitar. I think Kevin knows how to play guitar. I think he knows how to do a lot of musical stuff. Great. Anyway, my understanding is that on a guitar, when you pluck one string, the other strings next to that guitar start vibrating. Self-regulation teaches that we are not like the strings of a guitar. We don't have to start vibrating the same way somebody else is vibrating. We can do self-regulation. It takes practice. It takes a lot of practice, but it will rock your world. When you learn to not be like a string on a guitar, and don't start vibrating the way somebody else is vibrating.
Great thing. I think I would add to that is that having a healthy sense of self and taking time each day to be quiet and be before God and to rest in God's presence and to find some solitude each day so that you're able to respond to people as opposed to just react to people.
And to be empathic without, again, taking on somebody else's.
Yep.
Which is kind of respectful to other people, to think that they can't it's not like they have to navigate it alone. None of us do, but nobody can do it for us. And we need to do it for ourselves. We don't have to do it alone. We can't do it alone. Just not taking on somebody else's energy.
So I've made a decision here, sitting here. I've thought about something we want to do. What we need to do, Ron, is we need to get you to agree, if you would agree to do this fun thing. You ought to do a course for us at Harvard Avenue on forgiveness. You had so much to offer today in this time. I think that this is something that's so relevant and so important, and the stuff that you've learned over your 47 years of ministry, I think you can make a real significant contribution to the life of this community and Tulsa community by helping us, and offering some coursework on how to do this. Because like you said, it's not an event, it's a process. It's an ongoing thing. It's work that we're always called to do. One of the things that as I prepared this and thought about my own life and ministry, is that this is the work we're called to do. That forgiveness is the main thing. It's the heart of our faith to forgive, and forgiveness is life. It's resurrection. And so all of life is an opportunity to explore this, and something we never get right. It's something to be working on to the very, very end of our life. And the wonderful thing is that wherever you are, you can always begin again. You can always start over. Tomorrow is a new and fresh day.
Our condition is not our conclusion.
Yeah. So we need to wrap this up.
Okay, let me mention one thing real quick. Okay. So on my way home from Boston, the conference on the importance of forgiveness, I get the New York Times in the terminal, and I'm on the plane. I'm reading the New York Times on the way home, and there's a cartoon. Two women at a table, having coffee and smoking, and one woman says to the other woman, "I'd forgive her, but I've grown rather fond of my grudge." That was like a God thing, I thought. And another issue with grudge and forgiveness. We can become so attached to them because even though forgiveness is considered to be a godly thing, getting even and payback is more popular. So anyway.
Hey, we really appreciate it. And I want to say to everybody on this call today, on this interview, we're rooting for you. We're cheering for you. We're here for you. And Ron, hey, thank you. This has just been extremely helpful. We are so grateful for the time you gave us today.
My privilege.
And as we wrap up, a couple closing notes. One is, this weekend at Harvard Avenue Christian Church, following the 11 o'clock service at exactly 11:45 p.m., we're going to have a camera set up outside so that you can come outside and say thank you to our healthcare workers for the past years of work. We're producing a video that we're going to be able to share at Hillcrest Hospital and other hospitals in the community, thanking our healthcare workers and service providers for their great work. So come and be a part of that. We just need 2 or 3 seconds from each of you. Also, next week interview. Next week, we're going to be talking about superficiality. Superficiality, and my guest will be the Reverend Darren Spoo, senior pastor of First Baptist Church here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Hey, good night, everybody. We're rooting for you. Have a good evening. Thank you, Ron.
My privilege. Thank you, David.